Historical text analysis requires aligning ancient claims with physical evidence. When modern religious claims intersect with verifiable data, logical paradoxes often emerge. One of the most rigid paradoxes in textual scholarship centers on the relationship between the Quran and the Bible. We are testing a specific modern claim that the Jewish and Christian scriptures, the Torah and the Gospel, were corrupted. We are going to test that claim strictly against the historical manuscript record and the text of the Quran itself. To build a baseline, we have to look at the instructions the Quran gave directly to Jews and Christians living in the 7th century Arabian Peninsula regarding their own holy books. In Surah 5, verses 43 and 47, the text asks why Jews come to Muhammad for judgment when they already have the Torah. It then explicitly commands Christians to judge by what Allah has revealed therein, referring to the Gospel. The text directs these groups to consult the specific physical documents they currently possess. The Quran positions itself using the Arabic term Musaddiq. This translates to confirming. The text states clearly that it functions as a confirmation and a guardian of the revelations that preceded it. If the Quran acts as the guardian of the Torah and Gospel, and commands 7th century Christians and Jews to obey the texts in their hands, the modern insistence that those texts are corrupted introduces a severe logical breakdown. That doctrine of corruption is known as Tahrif. It is the primary argument deployed to explain why the Bible and the Quran contain different laws and narratives. Placing the concept of Tahrif into the 7th century timeline creates an immediate structural problem for the Quran's own narrative framework. Surah 1094 gives a direct instruction to Muhammad himself. If you are in doubt about what we have revealed to you, ask those who have been reading the scripture before you. Instructing a prophet to resolve theological doubt by consulting a corrupted book would negate the entire concept of divine guidance. The text assumes the prior scriptures are accurate reference material. The Quran builds a framework of scriptural continuity. The documents held by 7th century readers are treated as reliable, uncorrupted texts by the author of the Quran itself. In the 8th century, a Syriac scholar named George of Be'eltan analyzed this exact problem. We can map his historical defense as a strict Boolean logic tree. This logic tree shows the two chronological requirements for tahrif. A global corruption of the biblical text must have occurred either before the 7th century or after the 7th century. Path 1 assumes the corruption happened before Islam. This pathway fails immediately because it invalidates the Quran's own 7th century endorsement of those texts as guidance and light, effectively rendering Surah 1094 in error. Path 2 assumes the text was corrupted after the 7th century. To test this, we examine the physical manuscript record spanning the centuries before and after Islam across the Mediterranean and Middle East. Look at this document. This is Codex Sinaiticus, an ancient Greek manuscript dating to the mid-4th century. We can verify that its New Testament matches the text read today. Now look at this page from the Peshitta, a Syriac translation of Scripture. This version was widely circulated in the Near Eastern churches long before Muhammad was born. By the 7th century, Christianity was established across multiple continents and languages, including Greek, Latin, Syriac, and Coptic. Coordinating a global alteration of every existing manuscript across these distinct, geographically isolated communities without leaving a single trace of the original text is a logistical impossibility. The manuscript timeline locks the text in place. Because the copies existing before Islam match the copies existing after Islam, a coordinated post-Islamic corruption did not happen. If the biblical text is historically intact, the Quran's claim of being a confirmation means its historical accounts must align with the Torah. The Torah provides an extensive account of the Exodus, including the incident of the golden calf. In the original text, Aaron is implicated in the idolatry while Moses is on the mountain. The Quran retells this event in Surah 20. However, it removes the blame from Aaron entirely. Instead, it assigns the creation of the golden calf to a figure identified as Al-Samiri. Al-Samiri translates to the Samaritan. The Samaritans are a specific geopolitical and ethnic group from the region of Samaria. This timeline shows the chronological data. The top axis is the Exodus period. The bottom axis tracks the Samaritan people. The Samaritans did not emerge as a distinct ethnic group until hundreds of years later, following the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel. A Samaritan could not have been present at the base of Mount Sinai to build the golden calf. The presence of Al-Samiri indicates the blending of later cultural folklore into an earlier, strictly defined historical framework. By inserting an anachronistic character into the Exodus narrative, the text breaks the Torah's historical record. A second collision occurs with the historical figure of Haman. The biblical text identifies Haman in the Book of Esther. He operates specifically as a high-ranking official within the royal court of the Persian Empire. However, Surah 28 relocates Haman entirely, placing him instead in ancient Egypt. He is described as Pharaoh's architect, receiving a command to build a massive tower so Pharaoh can reach the God of Moses. This moves a specific Persian official across continents and reverses his timeline by centuries, placing him in the era of the Exodus. These revisions apply to theology as well. The Quran nullifies core Torah covenants, explicitly rejecting the principle of substitutionary atonement and removing Sabbath observance. Redefining geographical history and reversing established theological law is clearly a repudiation of prior texts, not a historical confirmation. The manuscript record proves the biblical text was preserved. The Quran's own text commands adherence to it. Yet the Quran's narratives contradict the history contained in those exact manuscripts. This matrix illustrates the resulting paradox. A text cannot logically claim to confirm an uncorrupted document while simultaneously rewriting its core historical data. Classical Muslim scholars recognize this structural trap. To resolve it, they categorize the doctrine of corruption into two distinct theories. This graphic illustrates the split. Tahrif al-Lafz claims the physical words were changed. Tahrif al-Mana claims the text remained intact but was misinterpreted. Early commentators like Al-Tabari understood the manuscript evidence, recognizing only interpretive corruption was historically viable. The text was intact. But interpretive corruption fails to solve the dilemma. A Christian misinterpreting a theological verse does not explain why the Quran physically rewrites the location of Haman or changes the inventor of the golden calf. Those are textual alterations introduced by the Quran, not interpretive errors made by Christians. This leaves the inquirer at a hard theological crossroad. Accepting the Quran's foundational claim of being a confirmation requires accepting the historical authority of the Bible. To reject the historical accuracy of the Bible to protect the Quran's narrative changes inevitably destroys the premise upon which the Quran attempts to stand.